All right, let's see. What are we watching now? Ocean Voyage by Encyclopedia Britannica. We've already seen a few Encyclopedia Britannica. I like them, but I don't quite understand like why they were made. Maybe we'll be able to figure that out with this one. So this was made in 1955, and that's all it gives us. It's called Ocean Voyage. I picked this. This is like the perfect blue topic. I don't really know what we're getting ourselves into with this one, but I guess there's only one way to find out. So let's start this. Yeah, so there's pretty much no lead up to it at all either. It's just Ocean Voyage. So I guess that's we just got to watch to find out what we're in for. Produced by Encyclopedia Britannica in collaboration with Paul Hanna. I feel like this is a name that we've already read before. I feel like he made a bunch of these Encyclopedia Britannica films. It's so funny because what I do with Atlas Pro feels akin to the Encyclopedia Britannica like business model, but I'm still curious what these programs were being made for. They must have been made for schools. It's the only thing I can imagine them being shown for, but they don't say that anywhere, so.
There she is, in the middle of New York City, my ship. Of course, this is just a model in the window of a travel bureau. But she's a beautiful ship. Any member of her crew will tell you she's one of the finest afloat. This is the first time I've ever been in New York City.
I like the narration, though, so that we understand the story behind this. Again, this is kind of an unfamiliar sort of educational content that we're watching right now. It's more story-driven. It's funny because there is not a lot of story-driven educational content on YouTube nowadays. So it's funny to see that that's how back in the day people went about teaching people about, ocean liners.
I understand that almost as many people live here as in all Greece.
See, that's crazy though. Just seeing like the old New York skyline and everything, like that's also part of the value of these old films. Not even like the content per se, but just like what they preserved. The shots of real places that have been preserved through film like this. It's just so fascinating. I love, like, even just seeing all these old cars. It's like, I can't believe the world used to look like that. But of course you get to see it really look like that, so, it's easier to believe.
In Galax City, a very small fishing village. My name is Nicholas Stamos Spiros Katsis, but just call me Nico for short. And there's my ship, the SS Olympia.
Dang, this doesn't even look real. Like, I know it must be real, but it actually is amazing just how big boats were back in the day. Like, I totally get why people were in awe of these machines back in the day.
23,000 tons and twice as long as an American football field.
That's so funny that they're still using an American football field for a figure of measurement. Like, what is it? 1955 Encyclopedia Britannica still uses American football fields.
An ocean liner getting ready to put to sea. There's a lot of work to be done. Food to be taken on board, oil for the engines, and the passengers' automobiles, lifted up by the big winch as though they were little toys. These men are called stevedores. They load and unload ships, freighters with cargoes or passenger liners like ours. In the crew's quarters up forward is a very comfortable recreation room. Tonight, I show my friends the souvenirs I bought this afternoon in New York. For my brother, a miniature Statue of Liberty.
That's so funny because if you've ever been to New York, you've seen like the souvenir shops just packed to the end with these exact same type of cheap knick-knack, replicas. It's funny that like back in the time, this was like an earnest thing to do, is buy somebody a cheap knick-knack from a store in New York. But now it's just so overdone that like, it's just tacky.
And for my sister, a fan with a picture of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, like that. A hand fan with just a picture of the Statue of Liberty. Like, I don't even think people would buy that nowadays.
Kocha, my best friend, says they're very nice souvenirs. Very nice. I was 15 when I left home, I haven't seen my family for a long time. After this voyage, though, the Olympia will make regular trips between America and Greece. Then I will see them often.
That's like an aspect of the world that I also find so fascinating. It's just right before you could fly a plane or drive anywhere, like boats were the only place you got like around the world. And it is just fascinating that you would have to get on a boat and leave your family and like never speak with them through phones or otherwise. I guess through letters you could speak with them, but there was such a time in the world where you would literally be an ocean away from somebody.
The lights of a ship are never out. Work goes on all the time, even at night. Bright and early the next morning, the passenger's baggage begins to come on board. Thousands of suitcases, trunks, bags, and boxes. The stevedores and ship stewards are very busy. And soon the passengers begin to come aboard. Baggage and passengers. More than 1,300 people are sailing with us. Because we are in an American port, we fly the American flag as well as the Greek flag. And that blue and white signal flag means we'll soon put to sea. Here come the tugboats to help us out into the river. Won't be long now before we leave the dock.
Man, I know I say this a lot, but it really is wild to just see all these regular people going about their lives, 100 years ago. When was this made? 50s, like 70 years ago. It feels like such a privilege to be able to see these preserved moments in time. Like, what were these people feeling when they got on these boats? They must have been excited to go back home. It's just like what even sort of people got on these boats. It's such an interesting time because it's hard to imagine now people going back and forth between Greece and the US to see their family on like a 2-week-long voyage. But there's something so appealing about it too. I think I would enjoy going on a voyage like this.
The tugboats have pushed us far into the deepest part of the river, and now our engines take over.
What's so funny is I feel like I recognize this area. Like this landing, I'm pretty sure is where the Intrepid is parked now. In the background, you can see the Empire State Building. I can't tell the other buildings, but this is definitely New York, and this is definitely like the harbors on the west side. So, I know exactly where this is.
There's the United States, one of the world's fastest liners. Our ship is being piloted by a harbor pilot, a skilled pilot who knows every channel in the river and bay. The captain points out a freighter off our starboard bow. Starboard to a sailor means right.
Starboard to a sailor means right. If you've learned anything from the blue section of this channel, it's that starboard to a sailor means right.
Now we are passing the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, if you've never been to New York, you won't know this, but the Statue of Liberty usually looks really tall or really small on the horizon. Like, you can always barely even see it because it's just one random island in the middle of the harbor that nobody actually lives on. So you only ever really get to see it as this little thing at the end of the river.
And we're leaving the skyline of New York City far astern.
Wow, look at that. The 50s skyline of New York. What's crazy is that it really does look like pretty modern still. Like, it looks like New York as I imagine it to be. I'm trying to figure out what these other buildings are. So obviously this one is the Empire State Building. One of them must be the Chrysler Building, but I just don't know what the rest of these are. It's crazy because if you know what New York looks like now, you know there's way more buildings. The buildings that are like middle height are like standard low height now on Manhattan. It's wild.
We are entering the Atlantic Ocean. The helmsman, the man at the wheel, sees something ahead. A tiny speck in the ocean. The harbor pilot has done his job. Now that we are in the open sea, he will leave us. Sometimes in rough weather, he cannot get off and must go with the big ship all the way across the ocean. But today,
That's really funny. I didn't know that sometimes the tugboats just like can't get back to shore on their own because of the storm, so they just have to ride along. Like, I wonder how true that really is. Because that seems like, I don't know, how hard it really is it? Like, this is a boat that pushes a ginormous boat. It really can't get back to shore. I don't know.
the ocean is calm.
I think it's so funny that they're little sailor costumes. Like, they're not in the Navy. They're just, like, on a sailboat. So they all have, like, these matching sweaters. I want one of these sweaters. If I ever do merch for this channel, somebody remind me to make a sweater that just says the USS Olympia. Or the SS
Now
Olympia.
the captain sets our course.
Greek line. Like, that's such a good piece of merch, actually.
Now the captain sets our course.
Oh, hang on, pause. We gotta look at this map. Germany looks united in this map. Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, and then the USSR. Oh, look at Africa. Wow. Okay, just look at the Africa real quick. You can see the French West Africa, right? Yeah, French West Africa. That's wild. I did not expect to see like the colonies.
York Harbor,
like that.
we will be sailing by way of the regular Atlantic shipping lanes. A distance of more than 3,000 miles, as far as from New York City to Los Angeles. 3,000 miles.
I love how that's also a unit of measurement that people were still using. New York to Los Angeles is just like a unit of length. Like, especially for Encyclopedia Britannica. Like, I mean, this must have been for American audiences if they're using football fields in New York to LA. It's just funny. Like, I thought that was more modern of a development in language.
Across the Atlantic to our first port, Southampton, England. The Atlantic shipping lanes are the busiest in the world. Sometimes there are as many as 2,000 ships coming and going, their wakes crossing and recrossing.
You know, it's funny to remember a time when, like, that was the most popular crossing in the ocean. Like, trade between England and the U.S. was so big. Like, now it's barely anything compared to, like, you know, trade between China and the rest of the world. It's reminiscent of another era.
But often, you can sail for days and days and not see another ship, so vast is the great Atlantic. We will be on the ocean for 5 days.
Wow, only 5 days? That's actually pretty good. I don't know why, but I thought it took like 2 weeks to cross the Atlantic on boat.
No, this is not an emergency. No one has fallen overboard, nor are we abandoning ship. This is the lifeboat drill. It takes place the first day out.
This is funny, the lifeboat drill. When was the Titanic sank? I feel like that was in like the 30s or something. I could be wrong, but this is definitely post-Titanic, which I wonder if that was like influenced by the Titanic at all. If they ever did like life raft training exercises before the Titanic. Maybe they did this and I just am obsessed with the Titanic for some reason. Wow, look at this lady's pants. That's very groovy pants for 1955. I don't know.
Everyone has his own life jacket to keep him afloat in the water. There is little danger on an ocean voyage these days, but the lifeboats are kept ready for any emergency.
That is like the ugliest horn sound, though. I hope it didn't sound like that in real life.
A ship at sea is like an island. A floating island
Oh, like an island. See, we've gone full circle on this
with a
one.
life of its own. I'm just an apprentice, of course, which means that I've just started my life at sea. But there's so much to learn, and it's all of great interest. Take the wheelhouse.
You know, there is something like attractive about a life at sea. I don't know what it is, but it is like so much more simple. It's nothing but you and the ocean, really. It's just so funny to repeatedly come back to this conclusion that like I would have enjoyed being a seaman on one of these boats.
For example, here are the many controls for running the ship. With this instrument,
I hope that's how it's operated too. You just go back and forth on it. What does it say? Full, half slow, dead slow, finished with engines, stop, stand by, dead slow, slow, half. Oh, okay. So that's astern, ahead, astern. Okay. So it's forward and backwards. That's crazy. Oh, these are probably for each different engine too.
called the electric telegraph, the captain can signal the engine room deep down below the waterline.
Oh, that's just a telegraph? That's funny.
The Olympia is powered by 2 engines called steam turbine engines. This is Aleko, the chief engineer. His job is to keep the powerful engines operating.
That's so funny. This kid looks like he's like 22 years old and he's in charge of this. I mean, I know people back then looked younger than they actually were or looked older than they actually were, but it's just hard to imagine a young guy just in charge of this like huge steam engine.
Our ship, like all modern liners, burns oil.
All right, how old is this guy? What is everyone's guess on this guy's age? I don't know. He could be like 30 or 35.
Older ships used to burn coal. Day and night, the oil burners heat the water to make the steam which turns the big...
This is a really cool glimpse into the old machinery of this too, because it is wild to think of how big of engines they were making all the way back in 55 and even earlier.
Aleko inspects one of the 2 shafts in the very bottom of the ship. Day and night it turns, spinning the propellers, driving us through the blue water at 21 knots, almost 25 land miles an hour.
See, that's crazy. You're going 25 miles an hour across the ocean and it only takes 5 days. I feel like it takes longer than that to like drive across the US and you go like 60 miles an hour usually. I mean, maybe it's because it's nonstop, but it's just wild that you can cross an ocean going only 25 miles an hour if you just keep going. It's just, I don't know. I always imagined they would go faster than that.
But a life of work is not the only one on board a passenger liner, especially for the passengers.
Dang, that's actually pretty sweet that they had a pool on this boat even back in the day.
A swimming pool in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. A game of shuffleboard on the game deck. Robbie takes careful aim. Good shot. Now Robbie and his father play another game.
Deck tennis? I've never heard of that. I heard of shuffleboard and everything, but is this still like a real thing, a real sport, deck tennis? What are they even playing with? It's like a little hoop? Is this like a lost sport, a lost cruise sport? I wonder. I've never been on a cruise, so I don't know if people still play deck tennis, but oh, and there's a net too. That's so funny. It's like a real thing. But are they literally just throwing this like disc over the net? Is there like an actual game? I'm so curious now. You can't just drop a new sport like that. It looks like they're just playing catch over a hoop or a net.
But later that night, we run into bad weather. The passengers in the big dining room, where 500 people have dinner at the same time, do not seem to notice the bad weather. We are running into a heavy fog, but on the foremast, the radar antenna is turning. Something like television, radar sends out signals across the dark water, searching the ocean for 40 miles in all directions. If there are other ships or icebergs nearby, the captain...
Ships or icebergs, they totally are thinking about the Titanic as just as much as I am.
The helmsman is confident as he steers his course through the night, guided by the latest...
Dude, that's so funny. The Sperry, what even is that? Is that like a gauge? I recognize that logo, or a similar logo. I feel like I've seen that before, though.
A gyro compass. As the ship goes through the fog, members of the crew relax in their quarters up forward.
Damn, these are some manly men right here, though.
In their comfortable, roomy cabins, the passengers feel secure and safe. No one is worried by the fog and bad weather. But later that night, we leave the bad weather behind us. The moon sparkles on the sea. We've been sailing for 4 days and 4 nights. Kocha points out a British aircraft which has flown out to inspect us.
Dang, I didn't know they did that either. They would actually fly airplanes out to go check out boats coming in. That's, again, something that you don't really think about in these days and age. But I guess in the immediate post-World War II landscape, they were looking for uses of their planes.
He also points out that the Union Jack, the British flag, flies from the foremast. This means we are now in British waters. And there it is, the coast of England. We're steaming up the English Channel to the port of Southampton. Now we see other ships. We will not go all the way into the harbor. We will save time by having a smaller boat come out to meet us, big enough to carry the passengers going to England, their baggage, and their automobiles. There is just time now to say last-minute goodbyes and to take last-minute pictures. Many passengers will go on to France.
One of the things I love seeing more than anything in these old films is people taking photographs of each other, because that is like just an added layer of preservation. Like, I'm always so curious about how the photograph that guy just took turned out, and what, where that actual photograph is today. It's so wild because today people take so many photos of themselves. So to see them doing the same exact thing all the way back then, at the first chance they had to take photographs, they were. And it's always in the same scenario, right? Like the people gathering on the cruise ship before they leave to take one last photo. It's just so funny how similar we are, even, years separated from having cameras.
But for others, the voyage is at an end. More than 300 years ago, the Pilgrims crossed from Plymouth, England to America. It took more than 2 months. But we have crossed from America to England in 5 days.
See, he did say it used to take way longer. All right, so when you'd sail, you must have been going so slow when you were sailing then. If it took 5 days going 25 miles an hour, then to take 2 months, you must be going like 2 miles an hour. I don't know if I'm doing my math right at all, but I can only imagine it works out sort of like that.
On a great ocean liner, the SS Olympia.
Hang on, wasn't the SS Olympia, wasn't that the same boat as the Titanic? Isn't there another boat that was the exact same size and everything as the Titanic, but that one didn't sink? Is this what I'm thinking of? I want to look it up, but I don't want to ruin the mystique of it all. But that's the end of it anyway. That was fun. I guess I don't know what I was expecting, but I guess we did go on an ocean voyage. It was fun to see like what it would take to cross the oceans back in the day. I feel like that's, one of the parts of traveling that no one does anymore is take the 5-day long cruise trips across the Atlantic. I wonder what the price point was, because I really would think that would be a lot of fun rather than just flying across the Atlantic to take like a 5-day cruise. And this even made it seem like fun. It's mesmerizing to see it all happening in real life and being recorded like this. It never gets old seeing these archival films and what's been preserved. I feel like there's no other way to go on an ocean voyage anymore besides watching this. So I really did have a good time watching this. I feel like I now know what it was like to take a ship from America to Europe or vice versa. I wonder if this is how many of the immigrants traveled. Probably not, right? Like it was probably smaller boats. This is probably more of like a vacation. Elites kind of probably took this more so than immigrants, but I imagine it must have been somehow similar. It's fascinating to see how much of an industry there was for travel too. Like they're obviously paying customers willing to go to Europe. All right, yeah, I think that was an ocean voyage. I think we have now at least one time sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. Maybe we'll do it again in a future video, but for now, that's it. So thanks for watching. The end.